To me, the courthouse in a small town, it's the center of the life of the town. Everything just revolves around it.
Before the telephone and the telegraph, if you wanted news of the outside world, you had to go to the courthouse square.
The courthouse gives a town its identity. It's very special to be the county seat in Texas.
The courthouse buildings themselves are intriguing buildings. They're interesting buildings. They're visually exciting. All reference a day that is long past and it's not coming back. And I think people are fascinated by that.
In the 1880s and 1890s, the people of Texas built some of the most elaborate county courthouses of the Victorian age. It is an era now known as the Golden Age of Texas courthouses. Each courthouse became the symbol of the county and represented the economic vitality of the region. These landmark courthouses emerged as the social center of the county and provided a source of pride for county residents. In 1890, Hill County, north of Waco, built one of the grandest Victorian-style courthouses in all of Texas. Hill County officials wanted to show that their county was just as progressive and prosperous as nearby Ellis and McLennan counties.
This courthouse is a symbol of the county. It was a symbol of the affluence they gained from being poor cotton-picking people to being the time when cotton was king and they could erect their own palace.
One Eastern newspaper called the courthouse a Texas monstrosity. But Hill County residents were proud of the building and considered it an architectural marvel. Residents of Hill County have a strong attachment to their courthouse.
I had been in World War II, and when I was discharged on a bus coming from San Antonio, when I got just north of Albert, I could look up and see the courthouse. I said, I'm home again.
In the early days, Hill County farmers would gather at the courthouse on trade days to buy and sell produce. In 1913, thousands of people gathered on the square to watch the circus parade. Often, picnic tables would be set up in the lobby for barbecues and town festivals. During the Great Depression, people attended gospel singing events in the courthouse. Politicians such as William Jennings Bryan, Sam Rayburn, and Lyndon Johnson addressed the local citizens from the second-floor balcony.
The Hill County Courthouse was the center of our culture. It was the gathering place for the people for many years. They came here for their marriage certificates. They came here to register the births of their children. They came here to the trials that were here, because in those days there was no TV.
The Hill County Courthouse by W.C. Dotson is a wonderful example of Second Empire style. You don't normally think of Texas and Paris, France in the same sentence, but courthouses like the Hill County Courthouse remind us that there are connections, and now it's a part of Texas.
The courthouse sits in the middle of Hillsboro's quintessential town square.
If the town was planned to be the county seat, quite often the courthouse was set on a prominent site at the center of the city to be the focal point of the town.
Before the interstate highway system, the main roads connecting South Texas and North Texas went right by the Hill County Courthouse. Over the years, the ornate building and its clock tower became a true landmark for people traveling in this part of the state. Be it busloads of college students going from Dallas to football games in Waco or College Station, soldiers traveling to San Antonio from Fort Worth, or politicians returning from Austin to their homes in Denton or Decatur, all passed by the Hill County Courthouse. The clock tower, standing tall and proud, became a beacon, a kind of reference point for travelers. But on the night of January 1st, 1993, disaster struck. A tremendous fire swept through the Hill County Courthouse, destroying the landmark building. As word spread of the fire, thousands of residents flocked to the courthouse square in disbelief. Many wept as they watched the futile efforts of the firefighters to save the building. An important part of Hill County went up in flames that night.
A neighbor of mine called me and said, Marilyn, when I crossed the railroad tracks, I saw the tower cave in on the courthouse. It is on fire. I looked at my husband. He turned on the TV and we saw it on TV. I said, I can't go.
The landmark three-tiered clock tower collapsed in a shower of sparks during the fire. The lights in the Hill County Courthouse clock tower ceased to shine.
It was the next morning before I came over, and it was still smoking, and it's just an open shell rock building. It's all we had that's left at that time.
There was a lot of people that came to see what was left of the courthouse. We in the Historical Commission immediately got letters from people all over the United States and some in Europe wanting to know what had happened to their courthouse. It was a very emotional time for Hill County.
One Hill County judge commented, not only was the courthouse in the heart of town, but it was the town's heart. In rural Texas in the late 1800s, having a distinctive courthouse in the center of town set one county apart from another. Rivalries between counties began that exist to the present day. Selecting the right architect for the task of developing the town's signature piece was often the result of an architectural competition.
Late 19th century was when courthouse architecture bloomed in Texas, and it coincided with the establishment of the first generation of professional practices in architecture.
Some of the great architects of the 19th century were W.C. Dodson, who built many courthouses. He was famous for incorporating the French mansard style into courthouses. Alfred Giles, a British-born architect, came to Texas, built a lot of public buildings as well as homes and other buildings. Eugene T. Heiner engaged in heroic courthouses. Perhaps my favorite is J. Riley Gordon, who again was not a local Texan, but he built some amazing courthouses.
These were very knowledgeable people, and they were building at a time when there was not a lot of infrastructure here. Traveling again by rail car, they would travel to different cities, often hundreds of miles away from their office, and were selling courthouses, county jails, bridges in some cases.
The courthouse is really the capital of the county because that's where the politics are happening in that county.
The courthouse was at the time the leading building in any of the small counties, and they voted bonds to raise money to build a courthouse. Each county tried to outdo the other one in having the finest courthouse.
The wave of courthouse construction began when the Texas legislature passed a law in the 1880s allowing counties to issue bonds to pay for new buildings. Tarrant County officials realized that having a grand courthouse would represent the prosperity of the county.
The Tarrant County Courthouse in Fort Worth is the most monumental courthouse in Texas.
One sees, as one travels Texas, that the counties that had economic power and economic potential, it shows up in the courthouse. Old Red in Dallas is a prime example, and the Tarrant County Courthouse is a prime example. This was the city fathers and the county fathers coming together saying, this is our town and we're proud of it.
There has been a competition for years between Fort Worth and Dallas, and I know that there was a quote in the paper reporting the day this courthouse opened, overhearing some Dallas natives saying, well, we sure don't have anything like this in Dallas.
Tarrant County's majestic Renaissance Revival-style courthouse was completed in 1895. Featuring an exterior of distinctive red granite, The courthouse is situated on a bluff near the site of Fort Worth's original military fort. Architects took advantage of freshwater springs under the courthouse and created cooling towers that provided natural air conditioning to the structure. In 1890, Fort Worth had a population of 6,000, and county commissioners authorized the expense of $500,000 for a brand new courthouse that would last for decades. When it was completed, county officials proclaimed it one of the finest buildings in Texas. The design is similar to the state capitol in Austin, except the Tarrant County Courthouse has a clock tower.
As the county government continued to grow and this courthouse started showing some signs of age, the need for space became paramount over the historical significance of the courthouse. Hallways were closed off and walled off. Offices were built in what are now the main hallways of the courthouse.
At one time, in the 1950s, some Fort Worth civic leaders wanted the courthouse demolished, declaring it was a traffic impediment, since Main Street traffic had to circle around the building. A newspaper reporter said the old courthouse had grown weary. However, preservationists recognized the historical significance of the structure, and in 1980, Tarrant County citizens voted 3-1 to restore it to its 19th century glory.
Luckily, county commissioners and other planners decided that this courthouse was worth saving, and a tremendous effort, taking almost 3 years of restoration and renovation in this courthouse with cooperation of the State Historical Commission and many other groups. A restoration was undertaken so that the glory of this courthouse could be restored.
Today, the Tarrant County Courthouse has been beautifully restored to original condition and still maintains its air of grandeur. In the heart of the building is a magnificent rotunda with a central atrium rising 110 feet from the first floor of the building. The domed ceiling in the rotunda displays the Tarrant County seal in leaded glass. Ornate railings grace the staircases. One county judge expressed his feelings this way.
As you enter the courthouse, you immediately feel the presence of the law of the land and the history behind our Constitution. It's very exciting that we've had a part in preserving our heritage for our children and their children.
I hear from people all the time that they feel that Tarrant County has the most beautiful courthouse and most historic courthouse in the state of Texas.
Victorian architecture dominated the American scene at the time, and in Texas, one county courthouse after another sprang up, featuring turrets, towers, and other fanciful embellishments.
In the latter part of the 19th century, the Texas courthouses are generally referred to as Victorian, which really just means they were built during the reign of Queen Victoria. But there were a number of different styles, but there were three major styles that most Texas courthouse architects employed. One was the French-influenced Second Empire style, which was patterned after the architecture in Paris during the reign of Napoleon III. Another style that was very influential in Texas was the Italianate or Texas Renaissance style, which was patterned after different styles of architecture from Italy. And the third style, which was at the end of the 19th century, in the 1890s primarily, was the Romanesque style.
Many of these architects had some stock plans that they would travel around with, and they'd whip out a plan and show it to the county fathers, or two or three, and the county fathers would say, you know, we can afford, what's the price on these? You know, we can afford Plan B or whatever. And so there were replicas, you might say.
When we think of Texas county courthouses, we think of these wonderful late Victorian structures with turrets and Gothic romanticism and just beautiful, beautiful romantic places.
An outstanding example of this Gothic romanticism is the Victoria County Courthouse, built in 1892.
Well, the Victoria Courthouse to me is almost cathedral-like in its aspect. there's almost a reverence one sees that whoever built this courthouse was very concerned that it projected almost a spiritual essence of what was democracy in Texas. That's what a courthouse is. It's democracy in Texas. It's democracy in action.
The Victoria County Courthouse, built of limestone, was designed by J. Riley Gordon in the popular Romanesque Revival style. Gordon did not finish the project, and Houston architect Eugene T. Heiner was brought in to complete it. In 1893, the Victoria newspaper stated that the building is the finest in southern Texas, with a view from the tower that reminds one forcibly of the beautiful fairy stories of old. To keep operating expenses down, the Victoria County Sheriff ordered that the water closets be locked and all light bulbs removed, except when court was in session. The sheriff also announced that no longer could horses be tied up to the trees planted around the courthouse.
There was a local businessman, Mr. Barnes, who was a jeweler, and every week he walked from his jeweler's store across the plaza up all the way into the clock tower and wound the mechanism that would run the clock for the week.
A major technological improvement came in 1898 when a telephone was installed in the building. The Victoria County Courthouse was as modern as any building in Texas. But by the 1950s, the building had deteriorated greatly. The courtroom balcony was declared unsafe for visitors and closed off. After a 7-year renovation that was proudly funded by a coalition of citizens and local historic groups, the meticulously restored Victoria County Courthouse was rededicated in March 2001. Today, the courthouse attracts heritage tourists to the area.
This courthouse is the symbol of our city, and many people have asked what it means to the citizens of Victoria. Well, when the fundraising efforts to restore the courthouse fell short, we held a bond election in May of 1998, and 83% of the people who voted for the restoration.
The courthouse sits beside Victoria's historic town plaza.
Victoria is also unique from, say, East Texas or West Texas in the sense that the courthouse sits a little bit off of the, quote, square.
Every day as I come to work, I see the courthouse, and I feel immense pride that I was part of the restoration project. And I feel very proud of Victoria for putting its foot forward and restoring this magnificent building, which is one of the 10 favorite courthouses in Texas.
All these courthouses, but in particular this one in Victoria, stand as a tribute to the vision of our early ancestors who realized that it was important to build these courthouses not only to transact the business of the people that lived there, but as a monument that would draw the people.
The old courthouses and their prominence in the smaller towns where they're the center of activity and the center of the town square are a constant reminder to the importance of our system of justice.
When the courthouses were built in the 19th century, the only government people ever saw was county government. The state government was distant. The federal government existed only as the post office. And the county government was how you interacted with government on every important level. And these courthouses represent that. They represent stability, they represent justice, they represent good work being done, they represent civic pride, they represent community prosperity.
At first, county buildings were little more than rustic cabins. Often court proceedings were held in tents or in stables. Courthouses were among the first permanent structures built in the new counties, and they immediately became symbols of local pride and self-government.
An individual would go to the courthouse in that era to register their brands for their cattle, to make sure that their lands were owned by them, or to stake a claim on land.
Trials, Elections, parades, festivals, campaign rallies, marriages, and community celebrations are just a few of the events linked to historic county courthouses.
If you're in a small community, say 5 to 10,000, the purpose of the courthouse is still a social gathering place.
The courthouse was always a place where people went for necessary business, to register deeds, to obtain certified copies of documents.
In the old days, is the only place where a lot of small counties could carry on their social activities. They had the Christmas parties in the courthouse, they had the dances in the courthouse, and they even had funerals in the courthouse.
Early Texans wanted to build the grandest courthouses possible as a matter of civic pride and to demonstrate that their county was just as prosperous as the next county.
I think in the period which we're looking at, the 1880s and 90s, everybody was building grand structures, and that was sort of the style. If you wanted a great public building, you wanted it to be big and impressive and not just a frame building or something simple.
And there was competition between the counties to attract business, and having an attractive courthouse was one of the things they felt would be very important.
When referring to the Bell County Courthouse, one resident of a neighboring county wrote,
"Its massive architectural entrance impresses the visitor with Bell County's unusual wealth and classic taste of her people."
The stately Bell County Courthouse in Belton, designed by Austin architect J.M. Preston, is another architectural masterpiece. The courthouse has the feel and look of a state capitol.
The Bell County Courthouse is certainly one of the most monumental courthouses of the 1880s, 1890s period. It is a Victorian version of classicism and crowned with a central cupola that expands in scale to become almost dome-like.
The oldest working county courthouse in the state is believed to be in the northeast Texas town of Linden in Cass County. It was built in 1861.
The importance of the courthouse to small towns is that very often it functions as a town hall, a community center, a meeting place. It's the only public building of any size where people gather, whether they're on the lawn playing dominoes or inside transacting business.
They're loved by the local citizens for a lot of the historical information that comes from them. For example, great trials that took place in the courthouses, or famous people who were there, or when they had a fire, or when they had a hanging. They used to have big crowds come to town when they had a hanging.
Eugene Heiner designed the splendid Brazos County Courthouse, built in 1892. The building stood majestically over the small central Texas town of Bryan. The massive clock tower could be seen from miles away. County workers could look out the windows of the top floors of the courthouse and see a small train station down the road, which today is known as College Station.
We used to play football and baseball on the courthouse grounds in Bryan. They had two elementaries. One was named Bowie and one was named Travis. One of them was on the east side of town, one was on the west side. And we had, once a week, we'd have a game on Friday afternoon, and we'd play on the courthouse lawn. And the people in the courthouse, they'd hang out the windows and pull for whichever side they was for. And every once in a while, then when we'd have baseball, we'd break a window or something, but they never did get after us. I had a lot of fun growing up in Bryan.
In 1875, Travis County built its fashionable Second Empire-style courthouse just across from the state capitol building in Austin. It was unusual because the tower sat on the corner of the building, not in the center. Built during the Reconstruction period, the Travis County structure was probably the first of the great Victorian courthouses in Texas. Unfortunately, many of Texas's grand Victorian-era courthouses have not survived. In addition to the ones destroyed by fires, others were thoughtlessly demolished. By the 1950s, they were considered outdated and unwanted. County officials desired newer, more modern courthouses.
The sad thing about those courthouses is many of them have disappeared. There's a lot of lovely, lovely old Romanesque revival courthouses that have suffered under the wrecking ball and been replaced with slabs of concrete and other nondescript kind of courthouses.
The outstanding Brazos County Courthouse was demolished in the 1950s and replaced with this box-style building. The historic Travis County Courthouse was abandoned by the county and used as a state office building. By the time it was demolished by the state in the 1960s, Travis County had already built a new Art Deco-style courthouse on another site, which is still in use today. Other historic courthouses that have been demolished include the unique mission-style structure in the Hidalgo County seat of Edinburgh in the Rio Grande Valley, and the Aransas County Courthouse in Rockport, with its unusual Mediterranean Moorish design, influenced, no doubt, by the town's proximity to the Gulf Coast. Cuero, Texas, seat of DeWitt County.
I want to welcome you to DeWitt County's observance of National County Government Week.
Every year during County Appreciation Week, DeWitt County employees are treated to a beef stew lunch on the courthouse grounds.
We try to do something different every year for County Government Week, and usually try to do one day something to recognize the county employees. So we had, in the theme of the 1800s, we had a chuck wagon here. And the gentlemen came and they cooked the stew. They started in the morning with the big pot, and so then we served the employees. And we had a lot of fun.
The DeWitt County Courthouse, a grand building that was almost demolished in the 1950s, is about to be totally restored, thanks to funding from the Texas Historical Commission and the state of Texas. The courthouse is a Richardsonian Romanesque Revival sandstone building, designed by architect A.O. Watson and erected in 1897.
DeWitt County is unique because it has a almost cathedral type of structure that sits up. And you can tell that the citizens, when they decided to design it, said, you know, we're going to win the prize for having a beautiful courthouse.
The courthouse is not located in the town's main business district. With 3 floors and a 6-story clock tower, some think it was designed after the post office in Washington, D.C., or the courthouse in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Arches and short columns surround the front porch. In 1898, the courthouse was updated with electricity and a telephone. By 1939, the county had paved the dirt streets surrounding the building, and later gas heaters replaced the wood stoves. Over the years, moisture problems and outdated electrical and mechanical systems, as well as environmental issues, have plagued the building. DeWitt County residents fought amongst themselves at various times over the last 100 years about whether to raise or restore the courthouse. Each year, the county government invites local school children to tour the courthouse and see a play about the history of the building.
That past few years, we've always had at least 1,000 during the week to come and see our play and storytellers, and to learn a little bit about the history of the county and the courthouse.
The DeWitt County Courthouse features an Italianate clock tower.
The 6-story clock tower located on top of the courthouse is very stunning, and it sticks out for quite a ways.
We were advised that the clock tower itself the structure is bad, and that we should not allow it to strike because well, we don't want our tower to fall. Right now, the clock is not striking, and we're excited that once we're finished with our renovation, then we'll be able to hear it strike every hour again.
The clocks were important, and many of them have disappeared. There's a lot of counties that used to have clock towers in their courthouses, but they were torn down. Clock towers were significant, and they weren't just an ornament. They were a functional part of the community. Clocks told when people needed to get up, clocks told when they needed to stop for lunch, clocks told when they needed to go home for supper. The bells were told for funerals, they were told for important celebrations.
In the aftermath of the devastating Hill County Courthouse fire, people across Texas realized that many historic courthouses were in jeopardy. In 1999, the Texas legislature authorized the creation of the Texas Historic Courthouse Preservation Program. Thanks to the help of the Texas Historical Commission and funding from the state of Texas, many of these wonderful buildings are being restored and preserved for future generations to appreciate.
Well, there are 254 counties in Texas. We have about 225 historic courthouses. In the 1950s, when many of these courthouses had air conditioning put in, it was recommended by engineers at the time to drop the 14, 18-foot ceilings, drop them down to 8 to 10 feet, and you have all of these false ceilings. What we are trying to accomplish is to do the same job that was done in the Texas Capitol. Take out those false ceilings, go back to the grandeur of the original architecture.
There are some beautiful courthouses in the state, and I'm really pleased that the state is doing these grants to try to save them, because I hate to see any of them go down.
One county that received a much-needed grant from the Texas Historical Commission is Lee County, located between Austin and Houston. The Lee County Courthouse in Giddings is an 1899 Romanesque revival design by J. Riley Gordon.
I was lucky enough to experience this courthouse growing up. My father had a gas station approximately a block and a half, 2 blocks from here, and I remember as a little child I would come over and I would help him. And my daddy would help interpret for certain cases, and I would come as a little child and just sit in and experience the courthouse, never dreaming at that time that I might be a county judge for this great county.
Even though the courthouse was considered modern in its time, drinking water was supplied in tin buckets that were filled daily by the janitor. Everyone drank from the same dipper. The Giddings newspaper reported that in June 1913, the courthouse handled 1 case of murder, 6 cases of animal theft, and 11 divorces. Lee County's Grand Courthouse had deteriorated over the years.
The courthouse was in desperate need of immediate repairs. Basically, what was done to the needed repairs that was done to the courthouse was everything from a skeletal strip down. Everything from the inside out was redone.
Today, the Lee County Courthouse has been fully restored. It sits on a square away from the main business district. The courthouse is built of red brick and limestone, displaying wonderful architectural details. The unusual black and yellow clock tower can be seen from miles away when driving into Giddings.
The Lee County Courthouse is the center of all activity. Good morning. This is the center of all activity of the county business. We have everything from county court to justice of the peace court, county attorney, county treasurer, or county auditor. There's a lot of business that gets done at the Lee County Courthouse.
It is a popular stop for heritage tourists. The people of Lee County are very proud of their restored 1899 courthouse.
I'm here to state that Lee County has the best courthouse in the state of Texas.
Another Romanesque revival-style courthouse, also designed by J. Riley Gordon, is in Hopkins County in northeast Texas. Built of pink and blue granite, this beautifully restored 1894 courthouse is the defining landmark in the Hopkins County seat of Sulphur Springs. It sits on the town square, which was a bustling marketplace in the 19th century. Sulphur Springs was known as the dairy capital of Texas. The square would often be packed with horse-drawn wagons full of cotton and other trade goods. The courthouse tower soars over the town and is offset by ornamental turrets and dormers on the roof. A trap door behind the judge's bench was built into the original courthouse design. An unusual checkerboard pattern rings the roofline of the building, and designs and faces have been carved along the small balconies.
It almost looks like a castle on the prairie, rising majestically from the surrounding grassland.
I'm so proud to be from Hopkins County, and this courthouse is such a beautiful building, and we all love it. You'll see many people drive up on the square, get their Kodaks out, make pictures of the courthouse, want to tour the building.
Just east of Sulphur Springs is the Franklin County seat, Mount Vernon. The Franklin County Courthouse is a classic revival style, complete with pillared porticos, gabled roofs, and a clock tower. Across the state in far west Texas is Marfa in Presidio County. The Presidio County Courthouse, built in 1886, is an impressive structure seen for miles around when driving into Marfa. Designed by Alfred Giles, it is an enduring example of Second Empire style.
Marfa has an extraordinary ambiance, in part because of the climate, the quality of sunlight and air. It's a kind of very crystalline and precise.
The courthouse, though fully restored, still maintains a strong West Texas feel on the inside. Presidio County has a cinematic reputation dating back to when the Hollywood movie Giant was filmed there in 1956. Legend has it that Elizabeth Taylor and Rock Hudson's ranch house in the movie was modeled after the courthouse in Marfa. Today, Marfa is home to a growing arts community, and the Presidio County Courthouse stands tall and majestic, towering over the arid West Texas landscape. The Somervell County Courthouse in Glen Rose is an example of Romanesque revival style. Through the years, the courthouse has been altered and, surprisingly, has a New England look to it.
Although it was built in 1893, it preserves, more so than any other county courthouse in the state, the kind of classic pre-Victorian courthouse type.
This charming courthouse sits in the middle of the historic town square. Often, courthouse squares such as the one in Somervell County are adorned with band shells, statues, fountains, and various claims to fame.
Courthouse squares and ornaments, I think, and the interesting things that happen at courthouse squares are every bit as interesting as the courthouse itself. It's also very reflective of the communities. There's interesting things going on. There's awards. Many courthouse squares will indicate the local high school football scores.
The square was the most important place in town, and all of the important department stores were right there on the square.
In Floresville, the Wilson County Courthouse Square is adorned with a large monument to the peanut. The Erath County Courthouse in Stephenville has a statue of a cow on its grounds.
Well, there many have monuments. There at least 24 have Confederate monuments honoring the Civil War veterans. Then others have other things characteristic of the county. Some of them are quite humorous. Seguin, there's a large pecan there, about 5 or 6 feet long. There's, down in the valley, there's a courthouse where the county raised a lot of spinach, and they've got a statue of Popeye there. They've got cows, they've got road runners, or Mule Shoe has a big mule.
Architects and craftsmen restoring these buildings often find unexpected architectural treasures. During a recent renovation of the 1891 Renaissance Revival-style courthouse in Columbus, the seat of Colorado County, workers discovered a magnificent stained glass dome inside the courtroom, which had been hidden by a false ceiling. The spectacular dome now complements one of the state's most historic courtrooms. The historic Stafford Opera House, which sits across the courthouse square, was built in 1886 and hosted many well-known performers of the era. Gonzales County's 1894 red brick and limestone courthouse in the town of Gonzales is another eye-catching building in the Romanesque style.
It is one of the counties that still arranged according to the old Spanish style of the courthouse with a large park square around it.
Gonzalez's courthouse features a massive clock tower surrounded by smaller towers and cupolas. Other architectural features include intriguing arches and balconies. The Mason County Courthouse in west central Texas is a timeless example of classic revival style. The courthouse is situated on Mason's Pleasant Town Square. The third floor of the building features a dormitory where all male juries of the era could be sequestered overnight, a practice that wouldn't change until the 1950s, when women were at last allowed to serve on juries. McLennan County's imposing Beaux-Arts Courthouse in Waco opened in 1901.
It is designed to be a miniature of St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome.
Milam County in central Texas and Atascosa County in south Texas have also completed restoration of their courthouses. The Comal County Courthouse in New Braunfels is another Romanesque revival building designed by J. Riley Gordon. It opened in 1898 and is still in use today. The courthouse sits to the side of a lovely town plaza in one of the most picturesque settings in Texas. The Hood County seat of Granbury, southwest of Fort Worth, is home to a beautiful 1890s courthouse that has been restored. It is a combination of Second Empire and Romanesque designs. The building is located in the middle of Granbury's historic business district. Both New Braunfels and Granbury have become very popular with tourists who are attracted to the historical sites. Many of Texas's 254 counties benefit from heritage tourism. Thousands of tourists visit historical sites around Texas, including courthouses, which are always an attraction.
Heritage tourism is the fastest growing branch of tourism in the country. Heritage tourists, according to Travel Bureau statistics, are better educated, they spend more money, and they stay longer than any other branch of tourists.
Native Texans and newcomers alike maintain a deep love and instinctive appreciation for the state's wonderful collection of historic courthouses. The vastness of the state seems more intimate when the universal appeal of restored county courthouses becomes common ground.
Well, I've had a lifetime kind of affection for courthouses. I'm like a lot of other people that grew up in rural Texas, and the courthouse was a big building that everyone went to see when they went into a town.
When I went into a town, even if I didn't have to go to the courthouse for business, I would always find time to go there.
Often, there were strong feelings within a county about which town should be the county seat.
The courthouse meant money. The courthouse meant business. The courthouse meant visibility. The courthouse meant power. And so where the courthouse was located was an extremely important issue.
I think particularly in rural counties, there's a rivalry about who should be the county seat, who should have the courthouse. And that played out especially in Williamson County in the rivalry between Taylor and Georgetown. Taylor is to the east of Georgetown and actually started out as the larger town. A lot of the cotton industry was really centered in Taylor. But Georgetown always viewed itself as a little more important because it had the courthouse. And over time, actually Georgetown has emerged as the larger town, and Taylor is the smaller town, and the resentment continues.
The Williamson County Courthouse in Georgetown is an impressive Beaux-Arts design. Built in 1911, it occupies the center of the town square. An elegant dome with the Goddess of Justice sits atop the building.
My early recollection of the Williamson County Courthouse was that it sat back off the street. It was a tall, imposing building. As a young adult, remember the draft board met there. That was important to me.
The Williamson County Courthouse in Georgetown is the work of a very prolific Texas County Courthouse architect, Charles H. Page of Austin.
The state's most populous county, Harris, built this impressive courthouse in 1884 in Houston.
The 1884 Harris County Courthouse was a Victorian Gothic structure. It really represented a cathedral and set on top of a massive fortress. It was shaped in a cruciform, which means it was shaped in a cross, and it had this beautiful tin spire that rose out of the middle of it. And it played into the Victorian Romanticism of the time.
Even though the builders promised it would last a lifetime, the 1884 structure began to crumble about 20 years later. So in 1910, Harris County built a newer, bigger courthouse in the popular Beaux-Arts design. A reporter from the Houston Chronicle once described the Harris County Courthouse this way: strength, beauty, utility, and comfort are combined with its impregnable vaults. It was considered one of the most modern public buildings in the state.
To show you how practical this courthouse was, the features that were particularly mentioned were the fact that it would have 2 Otis elevators. There was a circulating ice water system for the water fountains, a jury bedroom with cots and linens provided, offices for judges, and bathrooms for both women and men.
The first time I saw the Harris County Courthouse was in 1942, and it was just the old building there, and it had the round dome on top. It was a beautiful looking structure. Inside they had terrazzo floors, and a lot of marble, and all the bathrooms and everything were marble, and I thought it was just beautiful.
It occupies a tree-shaded square in the middle of downtown Houston, surrounded by newer, taller county office buildings. This elegant courthouse is still in use today, but is showing signs of wear and tear. To make matters worse, it has lost its title as courthouse and is now referred to as the Civil Courts Building. Harris County officials have developed a master plan to fully restore this historic courthouse.
Well, the public spaces of the courthouse will be restored to their 1910 original construction. Therefore, they'll replace the stone staircases on the San Jacinto and the Fannin Street sides. They hope to open up the rotunda all the way to the dome again. They hope to restore the grand staircase.
Today, the Harris County Courthouse sits quietly awaiting its planned restoration. It still maintains a sense of dignity, even though dwarfed in size by the sleek, modern skyscrapers of downtown Houston. Another Beaux-Arts-style courthouse is in the Anderson County seat of Palestine, located in East Texas. Palestine is similar to other railroad towns where the county courthouse was built away from the central business district.
A lot of the architecture of some of the older churches was similar. So you would find the kind of architecture here in Anderson County of Palestine. You might find that in the First Baptist Church in Palestine.
In 1902, the citizens of Newton County celebrated the opening of its classic Second Empire-style courthouse. Newton is located deep in East Texas, near the Louisiana border.
The only concrete in town was around the courthouse square. And so my friends and I used to skate through the cross halls to get to the other side of the courthouse square. Then I was in high school, about a 13, 14-year-old, when an uncle of mine was murdered. And so I sat in this beautiful balcony overlooking the district courtroom and listened to a trial, and this was a on-hands civic lesson.
The courthouse is very important because that's where most of your major events takes place. Our big district courtroom not only is used for court, it can be used for any number of things. If you had a big turnout of citizens, that's where we would meet. As a high school band member, I had to come to the courthouse square and help play the music that saw our boys off to World War II as they boarded the buses to leave, not knowing if they would return or not.
On a late August afternoon in 2000, residents of Newton, like the residents of Hill County, watched in disbelief as their historic, century-old courthouse was ravaged by fire.
Around 6 o'clock, a telephone rang and a voice said, "Bonnie, the courthouse is on fire." I rushed to town, and as I was coming in, I had a clear view of the tower. And I could see smoke billowing and flames, and needless to say, my heart just stopped. The feeling that I had for the history of this building would not allow me to stay and watch it burn.
As I came in front of the school, I could see the smoke rising. And got here, the fire departments were here, several were here, police department, sheriff's office, and I got on the hose with them and we started trying to fight the fire. As we got the flames subsided and all of the county officers had heard about it, they came on the square, and several of us there, and we were hugging one another and crying. And like I say, when the bell fell, that was kind of reminded me of the death toll for something. And this courthouse has been here since 1903. It's our identity. We're a poor county, we don't have a lot, but everybody identifies with this, and I still get choked up talking about it.
The people of Newton County are so proud of their courthouse that they have blankets displaying the image of the building. The courthouse now sits empty, with the windows boarded up to cover the burned-out interior. Newton County has received a grant from the Texas Historical Commission and plans to begin full restoration of the building soon.
I love my courthouse as much as I love the home I live in. And I think this is the way that most of the people look at it.
Walker County built its Second Empire-style courthouse in Huntsville in 1888. In 1968, on Christmas Eve, the historic courthouse was also destroyed by fire. The damage was so severe that the building was not salvageable.
The old courthouse is burned because of their construction. In those days, they didn't have the modern facilities for electric wiring and things like that, and rodents would get into the buildings and chew on the wires and stuff. And then a lot of this type of construction, they had a lot of open vents that went from the ground floor all the way up. That just creates a draft, and it just sucks the fire through the building. Once it starts, it's almost impossible to control it.
The loss of the Hill County Courthouse in Hillsboro became the rallying point for the Texas courthouse renovation effort. The courthouse was built with a wooden frame structure. After the fire, only the limestone walls and the iron staircase survived. Even though Hill County residents were saddened by the tragic fire, they were determined to rebuild their landmark courthouse. Hill County native and country music legend Willie Nelson performed 2 concerts on the grounds of the courthouse to raise funds for restoration. With the help of thousands of donations from all over the world, the Hill County Courthouse has been beautifully restored to original 1890s condition. The courthouse, with its distinctive mansard roof, again stands proud in the center of Hillsboro's town square. 2-story Corinthian columns grace the sides of the building's exterior. Inside is a 2-story courtroom with a balcony.
It is wonderful to look at. It is just a fantastic example of historic Texas architecture.
It's one of the most beautiful courthouses in the state today.
It's a landmark, a beloved landmark.
Now the clock tower of the historic Hill County Courthouse shines brightly in the night sky. Today, Texas boasts the largest collection of restored county courthouses in the country, attracting heritage tourists and casual observers alike. In large and small communities, the courthouse represents a galvanizing force for preservationists who work together to restore historic buildings to their former glory and renew our link with the past.
Without these courthouses, our generations to come will lose the connection that they have to their forefathers.
It's really important to preserve these courthouses. That's Texas history. That's who we are as a people.
The values that built those courthouses, the values that strengthened the communities that built those courthouses, still exist in Texas. They're part and parcel of what it is to be a Texan.
In many instances, they are the oldest public buildings in a county. They are a community's estimation of itself in stone.